Hi everyone, welcome to another live Q&A. My name is Shakina and I am in the OET education team. I'm here to answer all of your questions today about OET. The format of the session is very simple. If you've been here before with us, if you've got a question, put it in chat wherever you're joining from, whether that's Facebook or YouTube. All questions are welcome, and it can be a question about anything related to OET preparation, any important questions you have about listening, reading, writing, speaking, or any other OET related questions. Please do put it in the chat. Wherever you're joining from, those questions will come to me, and I will try my best to answer as many as possible in the next 60 minutes. So I'm just going to look at the comments coming in. And maybe if, as we're getting warmed up, perhaps I can share with you a resource that is a wonderfully helpful resource. And in the chat, if you could let me know if you've used this resource, which is our graded sample booklets. Now, these booklets are real candidate samples of from the writing subtest and the speaking subtest. These samples have been graded, and assessors have given comments about why they're strong or weak, and you'll be able to see those all in these booklets. They're a great resource to prepare as you study, especially because they show you what the grade you're aiming for looks like, and they can give you a good idea of the kinds of things that assessors are looking for when they're assessing. So it's a great resource to have, and I'm going to put it in the chat. You can find them on our website, as I've said, on our Ready page, and they are there to download for absolutely free. It is a PDF. Both of them are PDFs, so you can download them and save them to your computer and or your laptop or your phone and study from them. So that just wanted to kick off the session with that as you're getting warmed up. And I've got a question here from Victor on YouTube. So thank you for your question, Victor. He's asking what's the easiest way to score more in all of the 4 subtests, especially in the speaking part of or the speaking subtest. So it's a really good idea that you've already sort of assessed where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and you've identified that speaking is an area that you need to work on. And I'm going to recommend a great resource for you. And this resource really takes you through the 2 sets of criteria that the assessors use to mark your speaking. So you have your linguistic criteria, which is things like fluency, your pronunciation, how intelligible you are, your use of grammar. Those are your linguistic criteria, and then you have your clinical communication criteria, which really looks at how you're able to carry on a patient-centered conversation or a role play. Now, both of those sets of criteria are important because together they demonstrate. Together, when you demonstrate the criteria, you show that you're able to carry forward or carry on a patient centered conversation. So, looking at the criteria is really important, and we've got our guide um, for each set of criteria. So, the speaking guide, part one, is based on the linguistic criteria, and part two is on the clinical communication criteria. So, I would recommend having a look at the criteria, at the guides, at both of them. They have plenty of examples to help you see what you need to demonstrate, because the assessors are looking for specific things when you're speaking, for specific skills when you're speaking. So I'm going to put that into chat now. That is our speaking guides on our website, on our ready page. Our ready page is where we have a lot of pre-preparation resources, and you'll find them there. And I've just posted the link in the chat. So just to summarize, have a look, understand what the assessors are looking for when it comes to the speaking subtest, and look at the guides, look at the examples, and that should give you a good idea of where you need to improve. All right. Just taking that question off. And I've got another question here, or a comment really, from Shakina on YouTube saying, listening, she's always failed, not achieved the score that she wants. So it is definitely disappointing when you've worked hard and you've put in a lot of effort to prepare for your listening or for any of those subtests. It is a little bit of a disappointment. But what I can say is, it's always good to take a few steps back when you find that you've failed in one subtest, maybe a couple of times, just to take a few steps back and to think about the reasons for why you're not able to achieve that score. There are two things to look at. One is your test taking skills, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. The second is your language skills. Now, language skills are pretty straightforward to understand. It is your ability to listen in English, your your ability to understand different accents easily, understand what vocabulary and grammar is used, understand the main message of something that's being spoken about. All of those are your listening skills or your test taking skills, your language skill. Sorry, your language skills, not your test taking skills. Now, the other set of skills are your test taking skills, which are things like the time, being able to manage time well, your understanding of how to answer multiple choice questions, your ability to sort of your understanding of what the assessment criteria are. All of those are test taking skills. And often what happens is you are perhaps good at test taking skills. So you've done a lot of practice with OET sample papers. But your language skills are one area maybe where you've not spent as much time. And so it's really, or the opposite might be true. Your language skills good, but you haven't got a lot of you need to improve on your test taking skills. So take a few steps back, analyze what it is, where it is that the problem lies, and then create a plan to work according to that. If you find your language skills are what needs work, then you need to do a lot more listening, building listening into your daily routine, aside from your OET test sample tests. So listen outside of OET sample tests And I'm going to put into chat our listening week playlist. Our listening week playlist is really great because it's got lots of suggestions of how you can build a listening habit. And it's also got strategies for each part of the test. So, if you do find that, yes, your test taking skills are what needs work, your, strategy, there's plenty in the listening week playlist there for you as well. So I'm just going to put that into chat now. And I found it. All right. Okay, so I've got a question on a similar line with Sandeep on YouTube saying, I need help in OET reading and listening strategies, tips and tricks. Please discuss. Sure. So, hopefully, you just heard me talk a little bit about test taking skills and language skills. So, really analyzing which area you need to work on is the first tip that I can give you. And the second tip is to look at our official resources that are on our Ready page. I've shared the listening week playlist. I'm going to share the reading week playlist, which is another great resource, which has, takes you through each part of each part of the reading test, and as I said earlier, helps you to build, gives you tips on how you can build a daily reading habit, just like the listening week playlist. So both of those playlists are excellent resources. They've got lots of tips and strategies for you. There is no easy way to, so there's no trick as such to, you know, to to succeed. It is really building that habit of listening and reading, and that might not sound like a very fun thing to do, but it is. And slowly and consistently over time, doing that will really help you see an improvement in your scores. So building those habits in. The third tip I'd like to give you is to actually do a lot more of the kinds of reading and listening that you find in the reading and the listening subtest. So what do I mean by that? When you look at listening part A, you'll find that these are patient and healthcare professional consultations, where the patient is doing a lot of the talking and the healthcare professional is listening and taking notes. And you'll find this kind of listening, if you go on the internet, on YouTube, type it in, you'll find different sorts of scenarios and different sorts of um, conversations that are like or very similar to this kind of listening. Similarly, with listening part B, you'll see conversations, everyday workplace conversations between colleagues or a patient and a healthcare professional on the ward, at the pharmacy. All of those are everyday workplace situations. And if you pick up watching any of the great medical dramas that are out there, there's so many. Pick up one and watch it without subtitles. That will really help you get an understanding or get more familiar with that kind of conversation. Similarly, for Part C, you'll see in Part C, you've got the kind of listening that you would do to improve your knowledge of of the medical field. So stay up to date, and you'll find podcasts are great to do that. Interviews with the experts are great, and that's exactly the kind of thing that you will be listening to in the listening test. So doing more of the kinds of reading and listening that are in the test, authentic, um, real life listening and reading is really going to make a big difference. And The reading and listening week playlists have lots of suggestions and lots of tips for you. So I would recommend checking those out definitely as well. Right. Um, I've got a question again from Shakina asking, how do we tackle part A? Um, I'm making all of the efforts that are needed, daily exercise, but I'm not still able to get 20 in part A. So before I give you some tips, it looks like you are doing a lot of practice daily. Um, and from the sounds of it, you are doing a lot of OET sample tests or sample test practice. Doing a sample test is definitely part of preparation. It's important. But like I just said earlier, if you really want to see a difference in your score, you're going to have to read outside of OET practice tests. You're going to have to read real life material, real life, you know, things that you encounter in reading part A, like dosage charts, clinical treatment pathways, medication information. All of those are the kinds of things that you read in part A. So I would focus maybe not on completing one sample test every day. That it's not possible to do that, and it's certainly not a good idea because you're not working on your language skills. You're actually just working on taking the test again and again, and you're working on your test taking skills. And what you need to do is to work on your language skills to really see that improvement. So having said that, I'm going to give you a few tips for reading part A. And again, just a word of caution that there are lots of materials out there that you can get on social media, or different channels. It's important that you make sure you practice with official material, because if you're practicing with unofficial material, it can mislead you about the test. So the types of questions you see in a reading part A there, or part B, part C, or for listening might not be really representative of the kinds of questions you have in the real test. And so when you go to your test on test day, you'll have a shock because what you've been practicing with is very different to what's in the real test, because you've been using unofficial material. So again, that also could be something that you might need to look into. So I'm going to just put up my tips for reading part A. And the first tip is to go through the questions in order. Some of you might feel starting with the questions at the end of the question paper, part A question paper, is easier because maybe those are the more difficult questions. But why we recommend going through the questions in order is because the first set of questions, which are the matching questions, are designed to help you quickly skim through the texts. So, quickly look through the texts to give you an idea of what's in those texts. So they sort of prepare you for the next two sets of questions. So going through the questions one by one in order is absolutely is something that we recommend. Obviously, if you're stuck and if you're stuck at a question, you can always come back to it later. Now, the second tip is to use text features to find your answers quickly. By text features, I mean headings, subheadings. If you have a table, the row headings, the column headings. If you have a chart, looking at the arrows, looking at the words in bold, um, all of those kind of features of text are going to help you find the answers, because reading part A, you're not expected to read each word from left to right every sentence. use these text features um, to find answers and read quickly. The third tip is to check that your spelling is 100% accurate. We know that a lot of candidates lose marks unnecessarily because they don't take that few extra seconds to make sure that they've copied the answer correctly. Look around if it's if it's a gap fill, look around the gap to make sure that the answer is really what fits into that gap, for example. So these few things that might take a few extra seconds are really going to help you make sure you don't lose marks unnecessarily. And then the final tip is not to panic about time. Now, it's easy for me to say this, but it's normal and natural to feel a little bit of nervousness or anxiety. Um, if you find that it is something that's really overtaking you, um, try not using, not try answering the questions without the time limit. So um, don't have a time limit, just answer the questions, understand what the skills are, observe or think about how you're answering the questions, see how long you take, and then slowly work your way down. So let's say you took 25 minutes without the time limit. So slowly work your way down to 22 minutes, to 20 minutes, and then to 15 minutes as you find comfortable. So that will help you really get acquainted with how to answer the questions rather than worrying and focusing on the time. All right, so those were my tips for reading A. Let's see. It looks like there's some more questions that have come in. Um, all right. I've got a question here from Berry saying, in speaking, can I introduce what's not in the role play, especially when I see etc. in parentheses on brackets where I'm asked to explain something, for instance? Yes, you can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. You can introduce something that you might find related. You can say that, but the idea is really that those points in brackets are there to help you, to give you that, give you those examples or those explanations, and so you'll find that you don't really need to go too much out of those. um, the role card has everything that you need to be able to complete the speaking test successfully. Remember that you're not being assessed on your medical knowledge. So introducing something that's related to the subject, but that's not on the role card, is not going to get you more marks, or it's not going to demonstrate to the assessors that you're a better speaker. um, you are being assessed only on your language skills. Um, that is your clinical communication criteria and your linguistic criteria, the two criteria the assessors use. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about introducing something. It's really, you can, but it's absolutely not necessary. And if you're doing it because you think that might, you know, help pump up your marks, that's not going to happen at all. The assessors are not assessing you on your medical knowledge. Right. So we've got some more questions coming in. Thank you for joining. And if you've just joined us, remember that the format is really simple. If you've got questions, just put them in the chat. Any question is welcome. There is no silly question. So if you've just joined us, please do put your question in the chat. And I'm going to see if I've got some new questions that have come in. All right. Got a question here from True Stories. Which is better to bring in a recommendation paragraph? It would be appreciated, or I would be grateful if you could provide. Both of those are excellent formal ways of requesting something from the reader. So both of those are absolutely fine. Um, I'm going to put into chat now our writing guide, um, which is an excellent resource that goes through all of those, all of the writing criteria that the assessors use. And why I've put that in, why I'm recommending that for your question is because you're referring to a recommendation paragraph. You'll find in the writing guide, the assessors, there is a criterion called organization and layout. And it talks about the organization of your paragraphs. Now, um, you could you could have your recommendations in one paragraph, for example. However, I'd just like to say that there isn't one set structure to or set paragraphs um, to that's not what the assessors are looking for. They're looking for whether you have organized your letter logically, and if the key information for your reader is highlighted within your paragraphs and in the whole letter. So that's why I would recommend going to the writing guide and having a look at the chapter on organization and layout. But yes, though both of those requests or the ways to begin those requests are absolutely fine. So I'm just putting that into chat now. Okay, I've got a question here from MDK on any suggestions for reading apps, reading and listening apps for practice. So I'm going to repost our reading week and our listening week playlists. There are apps there that are recommended for improving your reading, building a daily habit of reading and of listening. And those are really the kind of apps that are going to help you the most in terms of reading and writing practice in general. um, you can pick up absolutely anything to read. It doesn't have to be on an app. um, Anything that is anything of the kind of thing that you would find in the OET test. So any kind of listening or any kind of reading. And I'm going to share our study guide, because our study guide is an excellent resource. If you haven't downloaded it already, I'm going to highly recommend um, you download it. And what I might do is just share my screen and show you a little bit of the study guide. A section from the study guide, which is, there are 4 sections, each one for each of the subtests. And I'm going to show you the reading section so that you understand what kind of resources are there. So let me just share my screen. There you go. Hopefully you can see that. So on the screen now is the study guide. So I'm just going to take off the question. This is what the study guide looks like. You can download it from our Ready page, and I'll share the link in chat. So there is an introduction section, but let's go to the reading section. Um, this is the reading section. So you begin with some basics about the reading subtest. You find some practice, guided practice with the reading subtest. And then each part has a dedicated section which covers some really key blogs, videos, articles that are really going to help you understand what you need to pay attention to. So you have that for part A, for part B, for part C. And then the last section here, and you'll find this section in each for each subtest, is your resources section. And this is where you'll find each all the different kinds of reading that will help you improve in each part. So you'll find real life examples of part B, types of workplace communication, real life examples of part A, texts, and real life examples of part C, texts, in the sense that these are, used every day. And so this is where you will see a lot of improvement in this section if you really sort of build this into a reading habit. So using the suggestions from the Reading Week playlist about the apps and then combining it with these suggestions is a really good way that you can build more reading into your routine and improve your reading skills that are going to help you succeed. So I'm just going to share the study guide in chat now. It is a free resource. So all you need to do is just click that link, download it. You can save it to your laptop, you can save it to your computer, your mobile, and use it. The links are given there in the study guide. It's so you don't need to save them somewhere else. They're all there. So highly recommend downloading the study guide. Question from Berry on YouTube: in writing, what date format is preferable or accepted? So OET is a global test. It's accepted globally. So there is no one format that we recommend or is preferred. Any standard format that is widely accepted is going to be accepted by the assessors. So there is no one single format. I'm going to put into chat a blog on writing the date in the OET letter. So that is hopefully going to help you a little bit, give you a bit more context. It's just that's coming through in chat now. Right. I've got a question here from Sandeep saying, how can I avoid traps and distractors in part B and part C of listening? So I'm going to just share my screen again with some tips, and I'm going to share part B tips with you, which some of those tips will be helpful for part C as well. All right, so the first tip, and this is both for part B and part C, is to use the context to anticipate the conversation. Now, in part B, you have a sentence that's above your question, which tells you essentially where this conversation is taking place and who the speakers are. reading that question in the reading time that you have before the audio starts playing, reading that sentence is really important because it will help you understand, or really it will help your brain to start thinking about what could be in this conversation, because these are all conversations, remember, that you have probably heard different versions of those safety briefings, of handovers. These are all part B kinds of conversations that you hear in part B. So your brain already knows what kinds of things you would hear. Using that reading time is really important because it gets your brain activated and ready to listen. So using reading that context is really important. um, the second tip is to identify what makes each answer option different. Now, looking carefully at the verbs, especially in part B, that make the answer options different, the meaning of what the focus of that answer option um, is really helpful. You can do this, by underlining, focus on certain words of difference, um, and that is really going to help you focus on the meaning rather than focusing on just hearing one or two words. So you hear one or two words in the audio and you immediately try and match that to an option. But really thinking about the meaning and the difference in meaning is what is going to help you not get tricked by the distractors. The third one is to listen to the whole audio before deciding your answer, so that you have a complete sense of the meaning. Before you decide. So again, goes back to not just picking up on one or two words, keywords, but just listening to the meaning of the whole thing. And similarly, for part C, you have reading time, which is really something that's important for you to, first of all, read the questions, all of the questions, um, because you kind of understand what the flow of the conversation is going to be, or the presentation is going to be, what topics are going to be discussed. And then, if you have time, read the answer options and try and identify what makes them different. But for part C, you're really using the context and the reading time to using the reading time to understand the context and the questions, understand the questions really well. Right. So Wakas, again, how can we improve in listening part B and C? So hopefully that has also answered your question. The tips that I shared there. Okay, I've got a question here from Chinu on Facebook. Um, so Chinu is asking, what do I have to do to improve reading part B? And I'm going to pull up my tips again for part B. Now, with part B, each question is different, so they're not linked in any way. And so, once you've finished a question, it's important to put that one behind you and approach the new question with a fresh mind, and not worry about the previous question that you've just done. So, each question should be approached individually. The second tip is to look for evidence to support your choice. Where do you find the evidence? You find that in the text. It's important for you to get into the habit of going to the text and understanding, or looking at the meaning. Again, not matching words or synonyms, looking at the meaning, and trying to justify uh, why you have chosen an answer. So really, questioning yourself to to think about where can I where why have I chosen this answer, where's the evidence in the text. You do this, of course, for the answer that you've chosen, but as you are preparing and as you're practicing, it's also a good idea to look for reasons from the text about why the answers that you have not chosen, or the wrong options, are wrong. And while this might initially take a bit of time, because you're spending time finding reasons from the text, you're spending time looking for why something's not the right and why an option's not correct. um, what this is doing is really training your brain to think about this automatically. And so when if you've got some time before your test, using this is going to really get you into the habit, and it'll come almost naturally to you on test day. So it's really important to find evidence from the text. And the third tip is to read the sentence which you think has the answer in more than once. So this is to help you confirm whether what you have selected is the right answer. If all of the if all, the whole option matches the answer that you've that matches what's in the text. So this is really important to double check, and make sure that you have really addressed the question completely, in your choice of answer. Right, so that was reading part B. All right. And I have got some more questions. So thank you for all of your questions. Please do keep them coming in. We do have another 20 minutes. And like I said, I will work my way through and get to as many questions as possible. Another question here from Shahina, asking, for listening part A, besides OET official materials, are there any that you recommend? And you've noted a few there like Benchmark and Jashin. So as I said earlier, it's really important for you to be practicing with official OET material. So the reason for this is because sometimes unofficial material, a lot of the times, will misrepresent the types of questions, or the types of texts or audios that you'll find in the test. They are written by, we don't know who's written them. And so when you go in on test day, if you've been practicing a lot with unofficial materials, they may not really reflect the test very well. Like I said, they might misrepresent the test. And so you will find a big difference, and you'll have been practicing for skills maybe that aren't really tested in OET. So it's important, first of all, to practice with official OET materials. You'll find those on our website, oet.com. And I'm going to put our ready page, which has all of the free preparation resources that we have. I'm going to put that into chat. And that's the page that's going to, bookmark that page, because that's the page that has all of the official resources. If you would like more official material, you can purchase additional material on our OET store. And I'm going to put the link to that in chat right now. So just going to put into chat our ready page. So this page has the study guide. It has all your subtext guides. It has an intro to OET course, lots of free material. And then, like I said, if you'd like additional material, you can purchase those from the OET store. And it is a worthwhile investment because you can be sure of the quality of the materials. You can be sure that you are practicing exactly the kinds of skills and the questions that are in the real test. Now, practice tests are one way to improve your skills. There are other ways, and the most important way is to listen or to read and build a daily listening or reading habit. And I just showed you the study guide. It has links or resources, a resources section that will take you to different sites where you can find um, reading or listening that is like similar to what you would read and listen to in the OET test. And when you read or listen to those kinds of things, you're building the skills that you need for test day. So it's important to, yes, do practice tasks. You don't need to do a practice task every single day, but you do need to read every day and listen every day to the kinds of things that you will find in the test. And so I'm going to share the study guide again in chat. That has a resources section for each subtest, and that's the section that you need to go to. That's the kind of reading you need to do every day, and listening that you need to do every day. So it's not practice tests, it's not official practice tests, but it is officially recommended, um, because you it's in the study guide. You can trust that is going to help you improve your listening and your reading. So I'm going to put that into chat again, which is our study guide. The resources section in the study guide is where you need to go to find more reading and listening material. So I am just looking for more for new questions. Okay, I've got a question here from Vashant on YouTube. What should we do if the speaking interlocutor doesn't cooperate or follow the script? So remember that the assessors are listening to an audio. They are listening or they're assessing your performance. They're not your performance in the sense that they're listening to the audio, the interlocutor's performance or the way that they're speaking is not what is going to be assessed. When they are making those decisions, they're looking at what clinical they're looking at the linguistic criteria and the clinical communication criteria and how you're demonstrating those. So your performance, what the interlocutor says, doesn't affect the assessment of your role play. What you need to do is to follow the role card. It gives you a structure for a logical conversation and really demonstrate those clinical communication criteria, really demonstrate all of those indicators that are there. I'm going to share again the speaking guide, which has, a lot of examples of how you can demonstrate the criteria. And really, your job is to focus on, listening to the interlocutor, responding to them as best you can, and continuing the conversation in a patient centered way. If you have issues, or if you weren't happy with how your test was conducted, you can always, after the test is done, submit a complaint. We are very interested and wanting to hear your feedback about anything that didn't go right for you on test day. Providing this feedback is not going to affect your score in any way. It's going to be something that it's not going to affect you in any way. So we would definitely welcome any feedback that you have about test day. So I'm going to put into chat the speaking guide, of course. Um, I'm just going to pull that up. So the speaking guide coming through there, and also the if you would like to give us some feedback about your test, um, I'm going to put that in the chat as well. Putting that in the chat. Now, the interlocutors are trained and they do follow the prompts there on their card. They are obviously, trained. Um, it There could be cases where you feel that the interlocutor isn't cooperating. You cannot see what's on their script. Maybe it could be a part of the role play where you need to demonstrate more empathy, or you need to explore their concerns. You need to do a little bit more finding out, perhaps. So thinking about that is also important. Just thinking about how you can demonstrate the criteria is really what you should be focusing on, and not worrying too much about the interlocutor or what they're doing. You're obviously listening to them, yes, and trying your best to demonstrate those skills. Right, I'm just looking for some newer questions in the last few minutes. All right. I've got a question here from Wakas on Facebook. Two questions. So for the first question, I'm going to answer it. And then for the second, I'm going to share a resource. So the first question is, in the letter, how much do we need to upgrade our grammar and our vocabulary? So remember that you on in your the assessors are using the writing criteria to assess your letter. Um, the criteria are purpose, content, conciseness and clarity, genre and style, organization and layout, and the last is language. So I just named the criteria. Language, which is what grammar and vocabulary fall under, is just one criterion. There are other criteria that the assessors are using to assess your letter. So it's important not just to focus on grammar and vocabulary, but really understand what what the other criteria are, why they're important, and how the assessors assess. For that, I'm going to recommend the writing guide. I shared that a bit earlier in chat, and I'll just repost it again. The writing guide takes you through all of the criteria, gives you tips on the criteria, and helps you understand, what you need to do in your letter to, to demonstrate a successful response. Using grammar and vocabulary, definitely, if you're preparing, you definitely want to improve your grammar and vocabulary, but using it to sort of to show off your grammar or your vocabulary in the letter is not really what the assessors want to see. They want to see that you're using grammar and vocabulary to communicate meaning, to make sentences clearer, easier to understand, to show the relationship between links in sentences. Those are the kinds of things that they're looking at. They're not looking at, you don't need to impress them by forcefully using uh, certain words or sentence structures. And the second part of your question, part C, I'm going to share in chat the complete guide to listening part, to reading part C. And this is where you're going to see some tips on how to answer those lexical questions that or vocabulary questions that you see there. Right. I've got a question here from Mega on YouTube saying reading is a challenge answering 20 questions in 15 minutes. Yes, it definitely is. It's something that is going to put anyone, even someone like myself, make them a little bit anxious. When you are working with reading part A, um, it's if you find that you are getting sort of really nervous about time and panicking about time, one tip that I can give you, which I shared a little bit earlier in the session today, perhaps you could go back to that session, that bit when the recording is available, is to actually not think about time and remove the time limit from your practice so that you're focusing on the skills that you need, and you're really understanding and getting comfortable with um, the skills and how you can answer the questions. So your focus is not on the time and answering quickly, your focus is on the skill, what you're doing, how you can find the answers, and then working your way down, uh, say from 25 minutes to 20 minutes to 18 minutes and then 15 minutes. That's a good way to kind of overcome that um, fear about time and also understand how you can work um, through the different skills that are needed. And I've shared quite a few resources, and I'm going to share the complete guide to reading part A, which is an excellent resource, has lots of tips that you know that that go into a lot more detail. Right, so we've come to the end of the session. So one last question here from Wakas. What's the difference on in the computer-based and paper-based test? Is it the same preparation for both of them? So this is in terms of the format of the test, in terms of the skills that you need, the timing, all of those things are exactly the same. It is a standardized test, so you've made sure that you are, demonstrating the skills that you need in both of those formats. It's really a matter of preference, which mode of test you are more comfortable with. If you're more comfortable on computer, you're good with typing, that's the test mode you could go for. If you are more comfortable with pen and paper, that's what you can go for. I would recommend, however, if you're confused, just to take a sample test for both of those and understand how the delivery or the presentation of those questions and how they work on screen, how they appear on a piece of paper, just so that you get used to that. And you can make your decision based on that if you are sort of undecided, and put in the sample tests page, which has links to both types of tests, computer based and paper based, for you to help you get an idea of what those are like. Right, so we've come to the end of the session today. It was wonderful answering your questions. If I haven't been able to answer a question and you have one, please do feel free to contact us on Facebook Messenger, or you can join me next in the next couple of weeks on the 8th of October at the same time, and at all of those times in your country. And hopefully we'll answer some of your questions then as well. Thank you for joining me. Bye for now.